Hello guys and welcome for another Aeternum video. Today we will take a look at a rare build that probably only a handful of people are using in PvP. I was excited to test it and to see for myself if it will work as well as I was imagining it, and to be fair, my expectations were met and even surpassed in some cases. I also want to thank Danilson and Z8W for contributing to the brainstorming about the build during the live streams, as without them probably the video would have been different. To make it easier, I would like to name the build the Samurai, as it will involve the Rapier as your main hand weapon, meaning that for the most part, or around 95% of the time, you will be using it for both offense and defense. Unfortunately enough, this build is not a mainstream one, and it's not even close to be a meta compared to the other melee builds, but for those of you who would like to challenge themselves, I think it will be a perfect fit. The quick-paced combat and the agility that goes with the Rapier makes it feel really smooth when it comes to moving around and one-shotting people who don't even expect it. Also, I believe that this is probably the hardest build when it comes to melee, and by far the skill ceiling of it is quite literally to the sky and beyond. Before jumping into the details for the build and the necessary gear, I want to quickly remind you that subscribing to the channel and following it on the different streaming platforms is free, and at the same time it helps me a lot to continue making gaming content and of course to provide you with the best meta builds, but also some alternatives such as the Samurai. For those of you who are already supporting the channel, I just want to say big thank you, as it means a lot and I really appreciate it. Now let's get back to business and check what is necessary for this build to work. The setup of the Samurai can be in many different builds, as it can combine a lot of artifacts and crafted gear to reach its final goal of becoming a death to your opponent. This doesn't mean that one of the combinations is better than the others, but it goes to say that there are different ways to approach the set and also to suit different playstyles. At first I will go over the idea of the build, and then I will explain the best choices when it comes to weapons, armors and jewelries. The Samurai is basically a lightly equipped Rapier player who is aiming at other light or even medium players. The main goal is to surprise your enemies with quick attacks, which can be deadly if opponent doesn't react on time. Since the Rapier is lacking any form of crowd control or decent staggers, it could be a challenge to pursue other light players. That's why it's really important to approach your targets from the so-called blind spots. Another additional tool that you can use for that matter is your secondary weapon, which in most cases would be either the Void or the Ice Gauntlet, depending on the PvP format. In small fights, such as 1v1s or 3v3s, the Void Gauntlet probably is the better choice, but when it goes to a higher scale such as OPRs or Wars, the Ice Gauntlet will provide you with the necessary sustain and of course the potential to lock down people. The playstyle, as you can imagine, is quite risky, and that's why I tend to believe that this is the hardest melee build out there. This also is probably the reason why it is not so common to see so many samurais instead of fire staff users. So what are the weapons that we should consider for this build, and what are the perks needed so we can make it work? Starting with the Rapier, I've made myself a combination of Rogue, Penetrating Backstab and Plague Crits. Those three perks have an insane amount of damage when it comes to hitting targets from the back, and the amount of burst that you can have literally can kill someone in less than 2 seconds. Of course, if your opponent is facing you, the damage boost will not be there, but again, and remember that you are type of an assassin, so their backs should be your goal. I personally don't like the idea of going finisher for this build simply because I run without any bleeds, and also the finisher will have way lower damage when it comes to auto attack builds such as this one. The skill tree of the Rapier looks like this, and you can already see why the finisher would not work. As we don't have Tondo in the build, as well as not going fully into the flurry, the bonus damage from bleeds will just not get applied. You might be thinking that some of the passives can be replaced or removed completely, but trust me, you don't want to miss on all those bonuses from what we already have. To say a few words about the skill tree, I must mention that we go for Flurry, Fletch and Evade as our 3 core abilities. Flurry will give us a nice burst to targets that already lost significant amount of their stamina, and also it will provide us with the ability to trade with other melee players that are fighting us. Using the perk will only make this ability stronger, as it will give us invulnerability for 0.5 seconds and a bit of self-healing that would keep us alive in tough situations. Fletch is our next ability on the list, and this is basically your go in or go out tool. Most people don't really respect the Fletch as a damage threat, but trust me, the damage from that thing is just insane. The first impact is dealing a whopping 145%, and when you follow this up with the passive at the very bottom, you are getting to an additional 115%. In total, that makes 260% weapon damage in less than a second, and on top of this, there is another passive called Backside, which will give you additional 15% critical damage on your next critical hit within 5 seconds. Last but not least, the best ability from the whole kit, the Evade. I mean, there is so much to be said, I don't even know if I should start. In short, if used properly, it gives you extra dodge, damage boost, stamina, movement speed, repositioning in all different directions, and of course most importantly, it looks cool. Also kind of self-explanatory, we go for the right side ultimate momentum, as this is a mandatory pick for all on-hit Rapier users. The bonus of 30% base damage after usage of an ability is something that you cannot really skip. Now when we know all the details about the Rapier, let's take a quick look about the secondary weapons, which in that case are the Ice and the Void Gauntlets. Here the idea is quite simple. We want to get the maximum benefits from those weapons with the least time spent using them. For the Ice Gauntlet, our 3 choices of abilities would be Ice Storm, Ice Shower and of course Entomb. This way we can boost our chase potential with the effective slows that the Gauntlet creates, and we can survive under pressure with the help of the Entomb. The skill tree has nothing too special about it, as it's just a base for many other builds that are using the IG as a secondary weapon. Our choice in terms of Ice Gauntlet item would be of course the Deep Freeze artifact, which will set us up to get 15% bonus damage to all the targets that are affected by slows or roots from ice. This also includes other IG users, and you can already tell why this one is better when it comes to higher scale PvP. For last perk, I think going for Unending Toe is the best choice, but if you decide to run Entomb for some extra healing, you should definitely take Unending Toe on your armor. Looking at the Void Gauntlet, I personally don't like the idea of running Life Taker. The reasons for that are 2. The first one is that the unique passive can only be applied by ranged attacks, meaning that the Rapier cannot really utilize it, and the second is that the fixed perks on the artifact are not so good. I want to have better perks on my VG, and therefore I go with Slowing Tether, Play Crits and Keen. You already can see that my aim for those 3 would be to apply as much as possible disease, as well as slowing targets with the Tether, so my Rapier can do the work. But like I said in the start, you have a lot of different possibilities, and many different combinations between the weapons, armors or the artifacts are also possible, so feel free to discover and share your ideas. For skill trees there is nothing special, and we go with the regular Scream, Tether and Orb. Of course, the Scream can provide some pressure on close targets, while the Tether and the Orb are mostly used for slowing targets on distance, gaining some extra empower and having a small sustain in terms of heal. With the weapons and their skill trees out of the way, our next stop will be the armor pieces. Here there is at least few sets that can be used, but I would not go into full details about the min-maxing potential for each of them, as this would take us way too much time. For more detailed explanations or questions that you might have, please use the comment section or just ask me in the Discord. I will show you few different setups that are starting from the most basic and easy one to use to progressively harder ones to lowering the defense but increasing the offense. After all, this build success is based on the perfect balance between damage and sustain. My first setup for the Samurai will be using the Tumbler feet wraps and the Ankh. The build is based on self-sustain in the form of Shirking Heals, Healing Breeze, Healthy Toast, Entomb in case you use your Ice Gauntlet, and last but not least, the small portion of leeching from the Flurry, which will be reduced by the passive of the Ankh. This combination of items is really good when it comes to learning the build and to test the limits for it. I had quite a lot of games in OPRs and arenas, and I can definitely tell you that it feels amazing when it comes to survivability and escaping. The damage that comes with it is also quite high, as you can almost one-shot some people if they are not expecting it. The second combination for the samurai is leaning a bit more towards the damage side. Here we have to replace the Tumbler feet wraps with attuned leather pants, and since we need to make up for the loss of 15% in power from the boots, we have to take shirking in power on our amulet. This means that you can still run Ankh and add shirking empowered as last perk, but you can also craft a piece with shirking in power, type of protection and divine or refreshing. If you want to opt to craft, you definitely want to also use the elemental band as an artifact, as it might provide you with some additional empowers, and of course you can add leeching for more sustain. As you can already tell, this build will provide you with quite a lot of damage, but the risk of running lower defense is also there, so be careful. The third and the final for this video setup will be the extreme damage samurai. This one includes winged leather shoes as our main artifact of armor, and we also opt to use elemental band in our jewelries. Again, the main priority for perks are shirking heals, even when we don't run the Ankh, as well as the amulet with shirking empower, protection and divine. The idea for running winged leather shoes is that your empower should be capped at all times, so the bonus of 10% base damage received from them will have its maximum value. For all those builds and variations of the samurai, you should aim to have a split elemental gem in your rapier. Also, when it comes to attributes, your baseline should be 350 dexterity and 150 intelligence. This means that with the perfect setup, you can also achieve 150 constitution. If the things are really not looking good when it comes to survivability, however, maybe dropping a little bit from your intelligence and increasing your constitution to 200 might help you to start get the feeling for the build. Of course, the damage loss will be felt, but it's better to start from somewhere while being alive instead of being dead. The last thing to discuss is the Hearthrune of choice. Here again you can have few different variations, and each one will basically suit to a different playstyle. Really good ones are the stone form for extra survivability, my personal choice being vines for extra pressure on my enemies, and even Z8W is running Dark Ascent for extra damage and sustain. Pick up and choose and try and see what would be the best suit for your playstyle. So that's it guys, the off-meta Assassin Samurai build is now known to you as well. I can guarantee you a lot of fun and a lot of frustration because of the tracking with the Rapier, but in general I'm sure that it's 100% worth it to give it a shot if you like fast-paced combat. I hope you like the build and I'm really looking forward to your feedback about it. If there is something you would like to ask or change, please let me know in the comments, or even better, let's discuss it in our Discord community server. There you will find all kinds of information about the game, as well as many other builds that are used for both PvP and PvE. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.